For the first time since week one, the Saints have a lead at any point in the game, and especially here at halftime with the Saints leading over the Giants here. A great start for them. And overall, I think this is one of those where you're happy you have the lead. I do think there's certain aspects that the Saints can get better in, and I'll discuss it here on our halftime show here for the Straight Up Saints podcast. As always, guys, if you have any of your thoughts and comments, get them in the comment section below, and we'll keep things rolling. But for now, man, I look at this Saints team, and I think the one takeaway I'm going to say is they're finally pushing the ball a little bit downfield. Obviously, the Rashid Shaheed touchdown was a huge benefit for them, and I think that, with this Giants secondary, they're not playing a lot of complicated coverages. It seems like at a lot of points they kind of just have one safety back. In that particular touchdown, you got Rashid Shaheed matched up against the safety in the slot. I think that's just an easy win right there. And you saw in the last 2 minutes or so, when the Saints are pushing it downfield, you saw some penalties on Drew Phillips, PI on former Saint Paulson Adebo. So I would say the Saints got to keep being aggressive. I think this is definitely one of those situations where I don't think the run's going to be there that much today. I think the Giants defensive line's done a pretty good job so far, whether it's Alvin or Kendre Miller. Taysom Hill's been used kind of sporadically, but we haven't seen any big plays from him. So I do think this is the type of game where you just got to push it downfield, take advantage of Olave and Rashid Shaheed's speed, which Rashid Shaheed is already over 100 yards receiving, which is nice to see. And I think for Kellen Moore, it's on him too to be aggressive. At the end of the first half, the Saints are very fortunate, obviously, to get the lead because of that Demario Davis forced fumble on Darius Slayton. But before that, they get over midfield and they have a chance to be the last ones to score. And I think they kind of throttled back offensively. I wish they were just more aggressive because Rattler was getting into rhythm. Your wide receivers were making plays. And, I thought that was there. So overall, offense is playing pretty well. Special teams is a mixed bag. The return game's been atrocious. I want to say Blake Grupe's had a really good half. But again, he's 3 of 4 right now. That miss from 56, no give me, but you kind of wish that he hits that one there, or 52, whatever it may be. Defensively, they have not looked great. I know that they've done a good job the last 2 drives. They got the stop, and then they forced the turnover. But I think the one thing that really concerns me, contain on Jackson Dart. He is going to use his legs if he has to and if he can. And it seems at times that might actually be his first option. So he's already got 38 yards rushing. I think that's like similar to where his line was for this game already. You got to do a better job of containing and keeping him in the pocket. And then secondly, they got to do a better job matching up against Theo Johnson. I think he's been, and Daniel Bellinger. The tight ends have been a nightmare for the Saints so far. And I think that goes hand in hand with not making Jackson Dart kind of go through his options and, scan his reads down the field. It kind of seems like he just gets to go to his first read far too many times. So Saints got to get better there. And then a slight note that I put myself down for, and I just don't understand how this keeps happening. Too many players slipping for the Saints. Too many players slipping on their home field. So overall, those are kind of my thoughts right now. You take a halftime lead anyway, you get it. And if the Saints are able to hold on here and win this game, you absolutely take that and you try to build off of it. But I think there are definitely things that they can get better in. Special teams has not been good enough today. Offensively, I think they need to be a little bit more aggressive. And defensively, were the last 2 stops/turnover that was forced, was that a fluke? Or are you going to start to play better football because the first 2 drives obviously weren't great? So going to get into any comments you guys have here on our halftime show. We're going to start with Michael saying that was some ugly football. I don't disagree with you, man. Thank you for the support, by the way. But yeah, it was ugly football. And frankly, you could see that because the lack of execution for both teams are there. Giants dial up a perfect flea flicker, and Jackson Dart is about 2 days late on that throw. And, that should have been 6 for the Giants. Thankfully, it wasn't. It ends up being a pass breakup, and then they end up, punting it away on 4th down. To me, these 2 teams have both played sloppy. The fumble for the Giants proves it. Saints missing a field goal. Red zone offense, I don't know what Kellen Moore's calling right now, but it's not working. It's got to get better there. So both teams have played sloppy football. I definitely have noticed that for sure. John says, I know it's too early to be thinking the draft, but I'm scared of using the premium draft capital for another quarterback. We have 2 projects with potential already. I think I'm loving Rattler more than most. Look, I think this game started off rough for Spencer. I still think he's throwing some behind on some guys. Juwan Johnson's drop was a bad throw. I know people are going to get on Juwan. Him and Alvin's chemistry needs to be a little bit better, but he is pushing the ball downfield. I think he's doing a good job of using his legs. That run towards the end of the second quarter was an excellent play call on the option. Good job to pull it and get out there. So Spencer's been fine. I want to see if he can build off it, though. Can he have a similar half to what he just had? If he does that, Saints might win their first game of the season, and the vibes definitely feel a little bit better. Manuel says these refs must be from New York. I forget what a catch is at this point, man. I really, I don't understand how that one earlier was called, man. What was that quarterback draw play called? But hey, we're winning. That was the one that really kind of annoyed me. I think, they got over midfield and Kellen Moore just kind of, throttled back, said, hey, we're just going to try to slow it down. And I think while doing that, you end up settling for a long field goal and you miss it. Thankfully, Demario Davis forces the fumble on Darius Slayton and Jonas Sanker picks it up, which, by the way, that rookie is just all over the field and he's been tremendous because then you get your kind of rebuttal. But I didn't love that call either. Jedi says Rattler's accuracy is quite bad. It's been a little sporadic today. Like 16 to 24 is not awful by any means, right? You're hitting about, what is that, like 66% of your passes. But, the ones to Juwan Johnson that should be out, that's got to be there. A couple of throws to Alvin are a little bit off. So just the give me throws, I think he's got to get better at. And I would like to see him keep pushing it down the field. I think he's done a pretty good job today. Yeah, has he gotten some breaks with the penalties? Absolutely. But this is a vulnerable Giants secondary. Keep attacking. See if you get some free yards out of it. Being in a shootout with the Giants really speaks to how bad this roster is. I don't disagree. I think you could look at it from both teams, right? I know obviously we don't care about the Giants. We're talking here on straight up Saints, but both teams right now, the fact that this is the type of game they're in is pretty bad. We got a super chat here from Stefan. Thank you so much for the support. If you got a question, drop it in, Stefan. We'll get to you in just a second if you got anything to drop in. Let's see what we got here. This play calling at the end was atrocious. I don't disagree. Trey Gift says 2025, we still don't know what a catch is. I thought it was a drop in that first quarter, but is what it is. Cody says, it's just me or the Saints are the Saints players the only ones that keep slipping in the dome? That's what's, just making me so confused by this whole situation. I don't think the Giants are slipping in the dome right now. I really don't. But Olave has slipped. Shaheed has slipped. We've had a couple of other ones before too, and I lost track. But we're up to 4 or 5 times where a player has completely just slipped. And it happens sometimes getting in and out of your breaks, running routes. But it happened in week 2. Kellen Moore was asked about it, and he didn't think it was that big of a deal and didn't notice it. At least that's what he said. So, to me, it's just kind of frustrating. Paul says the Saints are allergic to the end zone. I don't disagree there. I mean, the red zone offense, if you can get that going, that might be the difference between winning and losing this game. I'd actually argue it probably will be the difference between winning and losing this game. Donald says if we win this game, I'll be happy, but Rattler's stats are misleading. Accuracy is not there, and scrambling ability doesn't lead to big plays. It's all yes and no. The scrambling part, I'd argue Rattler had that one long run at the end of the first half where that kind of got them in field goal position. He set them up pretty well. So, in that degree, I would say I think he's been fine with his legs. Accuracy obviously hasn't been there. I don't disagree. But again, thank God at least this week we got them actually testing that Giants secondary. And hopefully they do that in the second half because I don't know if they're going to be able to run the football that well. Stefan with a super chat. Thank you for the support. Says play calling needs to be better. Great channel. Well, first off, thank you for the kind words. But yeah, I think play calling definitely needs to be better. I think in the red zone, I'd love to see them use Vele more. He's got the size. They used him a decent amount in the first half relative to what they've been using him in this season. And I think that's a good sign. But in the red zone, he's a big-bodied wide receiver. Just put the ball on his chest, let him make a play. And, we saw that, I believe, against the 49ers in the second half of that game. And since week 2, we really haven't seen it. So I'd love to see them go back to it. X becoming a member for 20 months, man. That's awesome. Congrats. Thank you for joining the channel. Saying penalties, miscues, and some head scratching play calling. Giants keeping us in the game. I don't disagree with that, but I would say this is when you get 2 bad football teams, this is what's going to happen. I don't think either one really just is going to slam the door shut on each other because that would require, excellent execution. And I don't think either team's really capable of doing that right now. I think the Saints obviously started off this game terribly in that first quarter. They have bounced back tremendously well in the second quarter. I mean, they put up a 13 spot in that frame. Giants wise, I mentioned it before, that flea flicker, that should be 7 right there. Darius Slayton fumble, you're in Saints territory. At the minimum, you're not giving up 3, maybe you're gaining 3. So on both sides, they've had miscues. Saints defense came out, was horrible. They were getting no return yards. They're still not getting return yards. Special teams was a mess. They left 3 points on the board with a missed field goal. So, to your point, it is sloppy football, but I'm not surprised. Look, we got a 1-3 team versus an 0-4 team right now. D23 says Staley's defense is awful, man. Running QBs always destroy our defense. Yeah, I mean, we'll see in the second half if they can have better contain. They're going to need to if they want to win this game. I think, Jackson Dart definitely has the potential with his legs to make some, game-breaking plays. And, I think that for this team right now. I don't know if they have the facilities up front on that defensive line to stop him, but hopefully they do. Margaret says, why can't Olave not keep his footing and Groupie wow terrible? I don't know. I don't think it's an Olave problem. I think it's clearly a Superdome problem. When this happens in week 2, and now it's happened to multiple players today, I really think it's a Superdome problem. I don't think it's Olave not knowing how to run without slipping out of his cleats. It's Bear Baby says, Sanker's been playing well. I need Werner to go sit down. Every time I see him, he's doing nothing or missing tackles at the first level. Let's see what Stutzman can do. We might get there at some point this season. It's possible. Sanker's all over the field. Yet another week with a turnover. He didn't force this one. But look, he was Johnny on the spot there to pick up the fumble and get a pretty good return out of it as well. I think he's a tremendous football player already. Why is Juwan still on the roster? Guys, that drop was not on Juwan. If we want to get on the false start in the first quarter, I'm for it because Juwan should not be happening to Juwan. He's been in the league way too long to pick up a false start, early in the game at home. But the drop was not on him. It was a bad throw by Spencer Rattler. Like that ball's got to be out towards the sideline, and instead it's kind of on his back hip. In my opinion, that's just a bad throw. And it really isn't an opinion. It's a fact. It was a bad throw. But yeah, you'd like to see Juwan play better than what he's doing so far. I don't disagree with that. But if this is about the drop, I would say definitely more on the QB than I would say it's on the tight end. Derek says Kool-Aid is out there loafing on plays, in my opinion. He's been horrendous. Horrendous, man. And I thought he was going to have a nice year too, and so far he's taking a step down. Shane says, I love that I totally called the Shaheed touchdown. Hopefully put some money on it too. Get some get a nice little payday out of that. Watch Alontae on the flea flicker, man. He was staring in the backfield and then realized he messed up. I'll go back to watch it for sure. Burgess saved them on that play, though. Absolutely saved them. And obviously it helps that Dart had a bad throw there. Rattler is who he is. Not great ball placement. One of Brees' most underrated traits, hitting guys in stride. I mean, among many, because that man, I felt like he did have a lot of underrated traits. If Shuck can't beat Rattler and can't preseason practice and can't beat Taysom coming off a torn ACL, he has nothing to offer currently. I mean, Taysom's not the backup quarterback right now, though. That ended up being a false report. So thank goodness Neighbors isn't playing or the Saints will be in a whole lot of trouble. I thought about that in this first half, right? Like they have struggled to cover guys. Guys are open. It's a matter of whether or not the Giants are making the plays that are there for them. If Neighbors was in this game, totally different situation for this team, Andrew says, Rattler hate will always be interesting. Did we not see the last season's red zone offense with Carr? It was atrocious. Yeah, I mean, red zone offense with Carr was bad. Right now, red zone offense seems bad. Could just be, look, I know things get tight in the red zone. That's why it's hard to score down there. But look, Saints are going to have to get better in that department. It's not all on the quarterback. I said play calling could be a little bit better. And we'll see if it will be. So second half is just about to begin here in the Superdome, beginning right now with the kickoff. So if anyone has any more comments, we'll get into it in our post-game live stream, so make sure you guys subscribe to Bucher Media on YouTube and then come back for the end of the second half because we're going to go live and we'll be going live for a while. So we'll see what happens. Saints have a lead right now. We'll see if they hold it. Fingers crossed that they do, and maybe we'll have our first post-game victory edition of the Straight Up Saints podcast. So we'll be back in a little bit. Thank you guys for tuning in.